So Nick, here we are at the Business Dojo, pretty exciting place, and some really interesting tenants doing all kinds of interesting things. Where did the idea come from to create the Business Dojo?
Well, I guess the real genesis of Biz Dojo formed out of Jonah Merchant, my co-founder, and I, when we met working at Air New Zealand. We worked under Rob Fyfe in the innovation venture team there. And we had the pleasure of working with IDO on some of the long haul, new design for the long haul travel experience. And that project and the fact that we had so many individual freelancers who came from sort of so many different disciplines, be product designers, industrial web, engineers, psychologists, whatever. It forced us to look at doing projects in a completely different way, and it kind of, I suppose, it kind of ruined us in a way for ever doing work on our own again without doing this. And so
you were scarred for life.
We were scarred for life, and so we thought, how could we create, or how could we build an IDO style operation that was more accessible to New Zealand businesses, because IDO are one of the most transformational companies in the world, and they are out of reach of a lot of organisations to work with. And so we thought, well, in true Kiwi fashion, let's just give it a go. We went out and we signed the lease for a space, and we thought maybe we could attract more freelance guys like ourselves who have kind of been doing our thing overseas or whatever, and maybe there's an opportunity for us to come together. And it was really, at that point, it was also the whole notion around co-working was starting to kick off as well, and we thought, hey, this has got to be something. We completely underestimated, I think, how fast and how quickly it would grow, and how many people like ourselves were out there kind of working remotely and feeling disconnected.
So you've brought a whole lot of like minds together, and what are the principles that a co-space works, and what's the adaptation that you have to make to, I guess, work in that environment?
It's kind of an interesting one. I mean, if you've ever had the fortune to be a freelancer or a contractor where you feel that you don't quite belong within the organisation that you perhaps are working with, or you feel that you're always a little bit transient and you're floating between, we found that suddenly when you get all those people in that same environment feeling that way, there's a sense of belonging and there's a sense of camaraderie and connection that you don't really get. It's been amazing observing incredible friendships forming out of two people who never met each other before, and they came together because they sat across the table from each other and they started to talk, they started to share projects and opportunities, and from that they shared really good friendships. And it's been quite incredible just to observe that and watch it.
Is this a Gen Y phenomenon, or does it cross different demographics?
We actually get asked that a lot. What's the average age? And I have to say, it's actually about 37. So
it's more Gen X.
It is, and so we've found that the really interesting thing around co-working is it's not exactly age determined. You'll get people who have quite a bit of experience working with someone who might be greener and fresher to it, and because there's this common theme around collaboration and sharing of ideas and an openness to work together, we find that bridges that age gap. And so we've got some amazing people who've come in who are 18, working with someone who might be, started their third or fourth business, and they're kind of reinventing themselves and they're back again from the ground up. It's definitely non-ageist, if that's the right way.
There have to be certain protocols and rules around the way it works. Do you have to make the rules pretty apparent, or do people kind of work them out for themselves?
Some rules you have to make more apparent than others. There's some no-go areas, like not knowing how to froth milk properly on the coffee machine can create a reasonably high level of tension in a shared working environment. But generally speaking, because everyone's professional, it's reasonably self-regulating. And for us, it's more around just providing a bit of a framework so that people can work within it. We don't have an utilitarian kind of way of laying out the rules and you must abide by them. This is a community-led venture in a lot of ways, where our success has been driven out of the success of our residents, and their business is growing, and so they have as much input into what's done as we do. And I think that's the way it needs to run, unless they can't do the milk. And then
the other advantage you have, of course, that you have lots of different people from different fields. So there really is that ability to cross-pollinate and cross-collaborate as well too, which makes that very easy and a natural process to actually be able to engage in.
Yeah, it's quite rewarding when you can see someone come in with the genesis of an idea and throw that idea out into the room, and you'll get someone who's a systems architect for a telco in Australia who happens to love living in New Zealand because he's a surfer, and then you'll get someone who'll pipe up who's the head of community development within one of the largest non-for-profit community groups in New Zealand, who go, oh, did you know da da da, and so you get these really strange overlaps of ideas and experiences that give you a completely different output on that idea than what you would have before. Because our community is orientated around the TED concept, technology, entertainment, design, you get this kind of common ground, but there's also a lot of diversity and there's a lot of different experiences. And so it's, some of the outputs are really bizarre, but also quite amazing as well.
Now, what about the business model? Can you actually make money out of this, almost like a social enterprise in some ways?
Hope so someday. I have to admit, the way we operate Biz Dojo is it's designed to be a very lean and efficient model, so that we keep it accessible for the community that we've chosen to have in this space. So it's safe to say that we do reinvest a lot back into this business as the founders, and it's a tough one. I mean, they can be profitable. It is a great model, but it does require very careful consideration as to how you make the model work, because there is a lot of co-working spaces that launch every day around the world, and there's a lot that close, and it's the really simple things that close them. Poor ability to negotiate with landlords, not being able to contain costs because things just don't go in a linear fashion. One day you might have 5 residents, the next day you have 10, but suddenly use 5 times the amount of coffee. And so there's a lot of areas that can catch people out. So you have to be very considerate about it. And you have to constantly be focused on how you add value to your residents and your community.
Because this is the other part. Many of the residents are in very early stage development of their own businesses. So therefore you are dealing with the riskiest of risky customers.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, our membership terms are only a month, and yet the general resident will stay with us for over 2 years. So and some have never left. And
don't like leaving home.
They don't like leaving home. It's so good when the parents are looking after things. But I mean, it's a really interesting one. We have a very open dialogue with our community. So usually there's very little surprises. So like with any business, whether you're a first-time startup entrepreneur, or if you're an established consultant who's been doing things, we all go through cash flow challenges, and the realities for us is actually having an open enough dialogue that if someone is in that situation, we're putting processes or measures into place to support them getting themselves out of that, because usually it can be solved by, hey, if you're looking for work, have you talked to this person? And I think it's around just having that openness that works through.
Now, of course, you've grown quickly too, which has allowed you to think about expansion. How are you approaching the potential to actually expand the business?
What we're looking to do now around expanding Biz Dojo is how we can collaborate and work more closely with others. There is an absolute limit to what the 3 of us can do on our own, and so now what we're looking to do, and this has been a big focus for this year, is around how can we work with the other regions, how can we work with other entities, where it's central, local government, so that we can try and build a more cohesive, more connected community, and get more opportunities flowing through nationally, because there's only so many leases that we can personally sign, and like everything, we've learnt some good lessons, and we want to share those lessons.
So you could take this to New Plymouths and other parts of the country as well too?
Absolutely. There is some critical things around co-working around density. There's a certain kind of, there's a bit of a rule of thumb around how many people you need in a space to create that kind of energy, to create that cross-pollination of ideas. But we we're incredibly supportive of seeing more of these spaces open up around New Zealand. The reality is that the more that open up, the more that we can connect nationally, the more that we can feed through opportunities offshore. It's great for everyone. So, roll on. We're happy to help.
And of course, you look at what's happened to the Kiwi Landing Pad in San Francisco, become very popular. It's the same kind of model on a slightly perhaps smaller scale, but this is being picked up around the world right now. This whole idea of co-working spaces.
Oh, it sure is. 10 years ago, the term didn't really exist. We've just secured Alex Hillman, the founder of Indie Hall in Philadelphia, which was one of the first co-working spaces to launch in the US, who we're bringing out here in September to kind of talk to, shameless plug, talk to a lot of people in New Zealand about what's actually happening on the world stage with co-working, because it's kind of exploding. There's been some amazing stats come out of the US recently that up to 30% of the workforce will be contractor based. So it's not kind of just an idea, it's really becoming a dominant force.
Just read recently 300,000 graduates in the US at the moment who are working on minimum wage. Wow. And this is another issue, isn't it? That as the post-global financial crisis era imposes its will on the world, it's harder to get a job if you're finishing at university. So the idea of actually starting something up for yourself is perhaps often a matter of necessity in some ways.
I definitely think it is. We're seeing this. We partner at the moment with Boston University on an international student exchange program where Boston students will come and work in New Zealand, in Auckland, at the moment for 6 months of the year. And we keep in contact with a lot of those students when they get home, and it's alarming, just the sheer number of those students who are incredibly skilled, who actually, their career prospects at the end of their degree are actually to carry on interning for free for some up to 12 months. And so I think the earlier you can learn, this new sort of be the new digital blacksmith, learn how to program code or be able to, use SolidWorks or design something, it just reduces that necessity for you to be reliant on someone else to hire you to work within a company. You can create your own opportunity, and I think we're going to see a massive shift that way. It's purely necessity.
The other advantage I'm thinking too in an environment like this is this ability to pick up new skills as well, to multi-skill and therefore to grow your own personal skill set, as well as obviously being add to other people's skill sets as well too.
Yeah, most definitely. We don't have any sort of structured mentoring programs or kind of workshops and those sorts of things, but due to the nature of how our communities engage, there's a lot of thought leadership groups that kind of come out, and yeah, there's because again you've got this mix of experiences and mixes of skills. There's the sharing of this natural flow of ideas that I haven't really experienced before in my own sort of careers leading up to this point.
Where do you think this could head to in the future? What's the kind of some of the targets perhaps you've set yourself down the track? Well,
we are, safe to say, extremely ambitious about where we'd like to see things go. We think that the isolation in New Zealand is actually a really powerful asset for us. It means that we can create opportunities, and we have to refine what we do to such a level that often New Zealand organisations do things well ahead of what our counterparts offshore do. And so for us, what we're really looking for is an evolution where it's not just individuals that work in co-working, that co-working is a blend between organisations that might have hundreds of staff. So, the future could be that you rock into an Air New Zealand building and they actually have a shared co-working environment in there where if you've got an interest in some of the stuff they're doing, you can drop in and you can work in that space. And I think there's going to be more of this blending between what we're kind of looking at, activity-based work environments where it's not just sole entrepreneurs, it's the whole remit of it, because so many organizations at the moment expand and contract depending on what they do, but what do they do with that space once it's empty? So I think the only way's up.
as a result of having a taste of it, I imagine that you'd find it pretty difficult to go back to working the old way, the traditional way.
It's safe to say I'm probably unemployable. No, I think I don't think the old way exists anymore, and certainly not in the fields that I've been in. And I think what's really exciting is there's this new emergent sort of I kind of know tenacity or ability. Kiwis seem to have this desire to just completely go against common sense and do new stuff. And
interestingly, you find it works.
Yeah. We have to make it work. We're so far away from everything else, and we don't make it work, we don't eat. So we've got to make it work. But no, it's safe to say, I'm not entirely sure what I would do if this dishes, I don't know, something weird.